Hello, everybody. This is Ryan Koki of the Seahawk Recap Show, and welcome to game number 3 of the divisional round Lions versus Buccaneers. And these Sunday games, this Sunday game in particular, I said in my divisional round predictions that this could go 50-50. Either way, these quarterbacks are great quarterbacks. They're first overall picks, former first overall picks, and they set up to have a clash in this one. And this one was a very entertaining game. This game is up there with the Packers game yesterday for me in terms of intensity and in terms of playoff football that I really liked. And it was a really tight one in this one. But let's get into the recap. It was a 31-23 win for the Lions over the Buccaneers in the playoffs. And let's start off with the Lions stats. So they had 391 total yards, 277 passing yards, 114 rushing yards, averaged 5.5 yards per play, 26 first downs. They went 6 for 14 on third down, went 1 for 1 on fourth down, had 71 total plays, 2 sacks allowed, 5 punts, 3 penalties for 17 yards given up. They had 0 fumbles lost and 0 interceptions thrown, and they had 32 minutes of possession time. For the Buccaneers, 408 total yards, 319 passing yards, 89 rushing yards, 6.8 yards per play, 23 first downs. They went 4 for 12 on third down, went 1 for 1 on fourth down, had 60 total plays, 4 sacks allowed, 4 punts, 5 penalties for 33 yards given up, 0 fumbles, and the 2 interceptions, one by CJ Gardner-Johnson and the other one by Kyer Barnes to end off the game. And they had 28 minutes of possession time. For Ryan's focus players, let's talk about Jared Goff. He went 30 for 43, had 287 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. And the thing that was really big in this game, and the reason why this game was not only so close, but the reason why the Buccaneers, I think, lost this game is because Jared Goff played a phenomenal game. It was a battle between two quarterbacks, and they limited the mistakes. No interceptions for Jared Goff. So he played a really good game. And also, the offensive line for the Lions played a really good game as well. You understand that when you're facing the Buccaneers, what they did to the Eagles was no fluke. They really did bring pressure. It was just the offensive line of the Lions was keeping them in check and keeping Jared Goff calm in the pocket when he needed to be. And that's when Jared Goff is at his best, when he is not having to run all over the place. And that's why he had a really good game in this one. But who also had a really good game was the running back, Jahmyr Gibbs. 9 carries, 74 yards, averaged 8.2 yards per carry, 1 rushing touchdown, had 4 receptions for 40 yards, averaged 10 yards per reception, and 0 touchdowns. Jahmyr Gibbs, remember, in their meetup in the regular season, he was not there for them. He was not available for them. So this was completely new to the Buccaneers defense, and Jahmyr Gibbs made him pay and was basically an X factor for this Lions offense. He had a really good game as well, controlling not only the clock, but when he was needed, he was ready to go and ready to run to the outside and cause some trouble. But another person that was there to cause some trouble was Amon-Ra St. Brown. 8 receptions, 77 yards, averaged 9.6 yards per reception, had the 1 touchdown. And the thing about this little tidbit here is that Amon-Ra was on Jamel Dean most of the game. And then Jamel Dean left with an injury. I think it was it might have been a hip injury, to be honest, or a lower back injury that took him out because in the second half, I forget when he got injured, but when Jamel Dean went out with that injury, Amon-Ra turned it on. And he was going up against another corner. I can't remember his name. I think his name was Zach McCollum, number 27 of the Bucks. And he just was torching the new guy. He was torching the new guy and making him pay for it. And that's what Amon-Ra does. Amon-Ra is a very physical wide receiver who, if you're not clamping down on him right away, he could run away and make some big plays, and that's what he did in this game. Let's talk about the Buccaneers offense. Let's talk about Baker Mayfield, 26 for 41, 349 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. And although Baker Mayfield's stats could look worse, you got the 2 blemishes on his record. One of them was actually a batted pass by Mike Evans in the beginning of the game. It was like, I believe, their first drive, where Baker Mayfield threw it to Mike Evans and Mike Evans just didn't catch it, batted it up in the air, and CJ Gardner-Johnson picked it off. And that was just a disappointing way to end a drive. And when you have those kind of blemishes, it really doesn't look like his stats were great, but he threw 3 touchdowns. He threw for 349 yards and he ran for a little bit. Like, I think he ran for 15 yards on 2 carries. So he did really well in this game. But let's get to running back Rachaad White, 9 carries, 55 yards, averaged 6.1 yards per carry, 0 touchdowns. That was also a big reason why the Buccaneers didn't win in this game. The run game wasn't as effective. And I think it was just down to the Lions defense getting pressure and all these ways to penetrate this offensive line. But you don't expect that from the Lions. You expect a pass rush, obviously, but you don't out of both these teams, you expected the Buccaneers to get home with pass rush, not the Lions. And that stopped Rachaad White in his path. And it's just how it goes sometimes. You just can't get going on the ground. I wanted to highlight Mike Evans, the wide receiver. He had 8 receptions, 147 yards, averaged 18.4 yards per reception, had the 1 touchdown. And that's the big thing with Mike Evans. He had a couple of drops in this game that he should have caught. I think he had 4 drops, but he still had 8 receptions. And the thing with the Buccaneers in this game offensively was they knew they would have some deep shots available to them because of the weakened cornerback group that the Lions have. Like, they had Cameron Sutton, who pretty good, but against a Mike Evans, against a guy that's like 6'4", and you have a 5'11" corner on him, yeah, that's a matchup you're going to take every time. And Mike Evans really did well in this game, and I also highlighted him not just because of his production, but because this may be his last year as a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. He's been with the team his entire career, and you know what? He's done so much for Tampa Bay in the past, so I wish him all the best if this is his last game as a Buccaneer. But let's get to the Lions defense, the people that caused havoc in this game. Let's talk about D lineman Aiden Hutchinson, 4 solo tackles, 1 sack, 0 forced fumbles. And I feel like whenever I bring up the Lions defense, it's always got to start with Aiden Hutchinson, because this guy, Michigan man in college, and he comes to Detroit and stays in the city of Michigan, and he leads his team to an NFC championship game versus the 49ers. And it's just insane the amount of havoc that this defensive line caused, and the offensive line of the Bucks had to deal with was mental. Aiden Hutchinson coming off the edge, getting pressure where he's needed, getting the tackles on the run game was extremely important. And even the stats that don't show up, Aiden Hutchinson was getting in there for pressure on a lot of these downs, and it was really nice to see from the Lions D line. Let's talk about DB Brian Branch, safety slash nickel corner, and he had 8 solo tackles, 1 assisted, 1 sack, no interceptions. But again, he came off the edge on a nickel blitz and was unblocked. There were a lot of issues with the offensive line of the Bucks that cost them, because they were in third and longs a lot of the time, and it was because of nickel blitzes. It was because of people coming off the edge like Aiden Hutchinson, like Brian Branch, who were unblocked sometimes. And that's what happens when you leave these guys unblocked. you're going to result in having sacks and issues. But good game from Brian Branch, man. He's turning into somebody that I think is going to be a very good player someday, and he's showing up in these playoffs, and he's one of the main reasons why the Lions won today. Another reason why the Lions won today was linebacker Derek Barnes. Three solo tackles, one assisted, zero sacks, one interception, and this interception happened on the final drive for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Again, it was a lot of pressure in Baker Mayfield's face. Baker Mayfield was hurried, had to read through his progressions, threw the ball, and Derek Barnes just intercepted the ball. Great anticipation from the linebacker and sealed the game for the Buccaneers. Great game from him. For the Buccaneers defense, let's talk about DT Kalijah Cansey, one solo tackle, one assisted, a one sack, zero forced fumbles. Don't forget that this is still the Buccaneers defense. Kalijah Cansey got in there for a sack, so it was really nice to see Kalijah Cansey, another young rookie from, I believe, this year's draft. Correct me if I'm wrong, but he's going to be, I think, a star. Him and Vita Vea are two great DTs. So I can't wait to see what he does in the rest of his career. Good game from the Buccaneers D line. DB. And let's get to corner. Carlton Davis, seven solo tackles, zero sacks, zero interceptions. And the big thing about Carlton Davis is that he was on Jamison Williams. And Jamison Williams, I don't know if you know this, but he had only two receptions in this game. Carlton Davis is known as the coverage corner. He is the guy that is not really perceived as a great tackler. He's your coverage corner. Whoever you want to cover is who you make Carlton Davis cover. And, a speedy wideout like Jamison Williams is a perfect guy for Carlton Davis to cover. And, Carlton Davis made some tackles in this game in the secondary for the Bucks. So that was also a good bout for him. Seven solo tackles is nothing to slouch at. Let's get to the linebacker, and I gave it to KJ Britt. Seven solo tackles, five assisted, zero sacks, zero interceptions. But this guy, his stats will deceive you a little bit because you look at the way that KJ Britt was used. He was used as the blitzing linebacker, not Devin White in this game. And when you look at KJ Britt, he was amazing, man. Like seven solos, five assisted, in the run game when he needed to stop David Montgomery, in the pass game when he was rushing the passer, he was getting in there, getting Jared Goff unsettled. It was just nice to see KJ Britt take that step and make sure that, at least he's getting pressure on the quarterback when needed. It just didn't result in a sack for himself. Wow. Just wow. This game was electrifying for both quarterbacks. They were on one today. A dogfight to the very end, and Detroit comes out on top to make it to the NFC Championship after 31 seasons. That was the second longest NFC Championship game drought since 1991. They finally make it back there. Congrats, Detroit, on making the NFC Championship game. Now you guys have to go face the 49ers to see who will be crowned the champion of the NFC this year. Honestly, I'm rooting for you guys to go and win the NFC Championship. It would be so cool to see this team under Dan Campbell fight for the Super Bowl in Super Bowl 58, because you guys, the amount of times that I've seen the pre-game interviews with Dan Campbell and what he did for you guys in his short tenure here, I believe it's 3 years now, and to see that, this man has built a culture of grit. What Detroit is known for is toughness. You're known for going through adversity, and I honestly, whenever I hear Dan Campbell get hyped about something or give you guys a speech or something like that, I always either want to do two things. I always want to either cry because it's actually a really nice sentiment, or I want to run through a wall because that's just how he brings the energy. For the Bucks, just a couple of mistakes for you guys ended up costing you. However, you guys clawed your way back into this game and never gave up to your final breath. It took to the final drive and a miracle play from Derek Barnes to get you guys off the field. You guys still had a chance in this game, and you never gave up. You can be disappointed with how things went. However, you should be really proud of Baker Mayfield and how he got you guys to this point. Remember, you guys brought in Baker Mayfield on a 1-year prove it deal, and he fought for the starting job. And he has looked so comfortable in a Bucks uniform this year. I hope to see him next year because I want to see what things will really be like with a year under his belt, with a year under the Buck system. Because for right now, he did really, really well, and I can't wait to see what he does in the future. Good game from the Buccaneers, all things considered. You guys were great, and in a rebuilding year, and in a year without Tom Brady as your quarterback, you guys did just fine. But anyways, that is it for the Seahawks recap show. And that is it for game 3 of the divisional round playoffs. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like and please consider subscribing so you don't miss out on any future content and the rest of the playoff content that is coming down the road. Have a good day, and I will see you for the game recap of divisional round game number 4, Buffalo Bills versus the Kansas City Chiefs.